I'm Jody, founder of the travel blog Family Travel Magazine and mom of two college students.
I'm Anna, owner of Waves and Wandering LLC, which is a full service travel agency. I'm also mom to three daughters and grandmother to three grandchildren. Welcome to our show.
This is our very first episode, and Anna and I are excited to talk to you about our travels. What you can expect every week is a little bit of talk about our current travels, some tips for traveling. Always, we're not just going to tell you where to go, but also how to go and what to do, what you need to know. And we're also going to talk to you about either the latest travel news or just things that you probably should know if you are planning travel in the near future. I thought it would be a good idea to talk a little bit about what we're interested in traveling, where we're interested in traveling. Anna, what is your favorite way to travel?
I think right now, especially as a grown and flown parent, I think cruising is the best thing because I really feel like without having to worry about is there enough for the kids to do? Are there going to be characters? I think it's much easier to just pack everything in one suitcase, hop on a cruise ship, and see all the places that I want to see.
Definitely. And even without little kids, I think having older kids, it's so helpful when your teens can go off into the teen club, they can make friends. You can kind of just let them go and not really worry about it. And then there's tons of things that you can do when you don't have the kids with you, whether they're not on the ship with you or if they're in the kids club. But I also really
Yeah, I think
enjoy
all of that's accurate.
for the same reason, I think I also really like all-inclusive resorts. You know, you don't necessarily go anywhere other than the
Yeah.
resort,
So
but
tell me about an all inclusive and how that works with like a multi generational trip. Like, is there enough to do? Because I know your kids are, college age kids, but when they were little, did they have enough kids' activities to do? Did you feel like you had any just private time, adult time that you could, go grab a cocktail or sit by the beach? Like, what is there at an all inclusive that you can do with everybody?
I think it definitely varies by all-inclusive, but in general, a lot of them do have kids clubs or some sort of kids programming. And I mean, I think your mileage will vary on that, whether your kids really want to do that or if they're just more interested in spending time at the beach and the pools. I think for our family, I think our kids just preferred to spend time like with us at the pools, but there definitely are kids clubs. There's other kids around. I think for multi-generational, the big thing is just I like kind of doing that. Everybody does their own thing during the day, and then you come together at night for a dinner or for, if there's shows or something. And I think that's something you just look for when you look at an all-inclusive is just basically like, what is our day going to look like?
Yeah.
Because typically you are going to get the most value for your money by spending your time at the resort. If you're going out every day and eating lunches out and eating, drinking out, you're not getting the value for really um, paying that premium to have all inclusive. So that's a big thing with all inclusives. I
Right.
feel like you really just need to do your full research to say, am I going to have enough to do at this particular resort?
Yeah. And I think this conversation alone highlights for people that there's not just one way how to travel. I mean, everybody is going to have their own preferences and how they like to do things and the things that they like to do on vacation and how they like to line those up. I mean, we had been talking previously about, how do you get from place to place or how do you kind of coordinate your kids' schedules with stuff to do? And like, I think there's a lot of hows when it comes to vacation. So, that's definitely something that we're gonna cover with this podcast, and we're gonna let you know that no matter how you like to travel, we've kind of done it all. We've done cruises, we've done theme parks, we've done all inclusives, we've done adventures by Disney, we've done things where you do start from scratch and you're looking through the old, Frommer's guide or, whatever Google search. There are different ways how to vacation. So I think ultimately this is going to be really helpful for people. If you're listening to us and you have a way that you want to travel, definitely let us know that you want more information about how to do things because that's part of what this is. It's going to be a chat between us and you guys, and we want to know what you want to know. How do you want to travel, and how can we help you do that?
Exactly. And typically in our podcast, and we won't do it this week, but typically we'll be taking actual questions and answering them. So we definitely welcome any sort of questions that people have, whether it's destination specific or around a specific type of travel or just recommendations. We will either take it as a Q&A, or we may even take it as a topic.
Think
For our very first topic, we want to talk about a cruise that we took a few weeks ago, and then Anna returned with her grandkids. It is the Utopia of the Seas, which is a Royal Caribbean ship. It's one of their newest ships, and it sails from Port Canaveral. This has been billed as the world's biggest weekend because it is one of the world's biggest ships, and it is currently running 3 to 4 day cruises, which is pretty interesting for a cruise ship of this size. The nice thing about a 3 to 4 day sailing, in my opinion, is that you kind of get a feel for the ship. It's a good intro cruise if you're not familiar with cruising at all, because you're really not too committed. And the nice thing about it coming out of Port Canaveral is that you can combine it with a theme park vacation if you'd like. So it doesn't have to just be a cruise vacation, especially if you're flying in for it. So Anna and I want to talk a little bit about just our impressions of the ship, and then give you some tips if you're sailing on this ship, or these could also be used if you are sailing on other Royal Caribbean ships, specifically within the Oasis class, which is their largest class. So Anna, what did you think about the
Yeah,
ship?
I absolutely loved the ship, and going back to, you mentioned that they bill it as the world's biggest weekend. I almost think that it's too big for a 3 or 4 night sailing. I think it's perfect if you want this kind of an experience, but you're not really committed yet to cruising because, I mean, you get everything on this ship. It has everything you could possibly want. Just I feel like I need a little bit more. Like I need another day to remember where my stateroom is, or I need another day to figure out the elevator system and stuff. But I think overall, the ship really does offer something for every member of the family. It's beautiful, it's bright, the colors are amazing. It was super clean, and the spaces are just fun. And that's like across the board for little kids, for adults. I just loved some of the spaces.
Yeah, I think whenever I sail on a ship of this size, and I've been on a few Royal Caribbean ships of this size, the number one question I get from people is it too big? And I think people are really nervous about it being almost overwhelming. And I mean, your opinion might vary. For me, I think I agree. It is, you cannot do the ship in 3 to 4 days. You have to accept the fact that there are going to be parts of the ship you are not going to see. There are things you are not doing. But the nice thing I think about it being a short sailing is that if you are concerned about this type of ship being too big for you, it's kind of a low risk situation. And, one of the things, if I don't know if people are familiar with Oasis class ships, but there are neighborhoods on these ships. And so, uh, one of our favorite neighborhoods is Central Park, which is this beautiful green space with they have different bands that perform there. They have a couple of bars, there's some restaurants. It's very serene. So, I think for a 3 to 4 day sailing, you really just wanna pick maybe, like, 2 or 3 neighborhoods that you're gonna focus your time on.
Yeah, I think that it's totally valid. And, it's not to say that you don't wanna sail on the ship because you only get 3 or 4 days, but if you're new to cruising or if you're new to these mega ships, and like you said, if you have concerns about whether or not this is something you can handle, this is sorta like an appetizer. 3 to 4 day cruise, see how much you can get done, learn that it's absolutely doable, especially because of the neighborhoods. Like if you're worried about this being too big because you have mobility issues, just like you said, focus on 1 or 2 of the neighborhoods. Spend an afternoon in Central Park because once you get there, there's restaurants, both, restaurants that you specialty dining restaurants that you can book in advance, and there's also casual restaurants that you could just walk in and grab a bite to eat, listen to the music, have a cocktail. Everything that you need is right there in that neighborhood. So there's no worry about, "Well, I'm gonna go to Central Park and it's gonna take me forever to get there, and then once I'm there, I'm not gonna be able to leave. Am I gonna be able to have everything that I want?" And the answer pretty much across the board for all the neighborhoods is yes, you're going to have something complimentary to eat that's included with your cruise pricing, something in the way of specialty dining, activities for you and the kids to do. So, I think this is a great way to introduce yourself to these larger ships.
Definitely. And we had some tips that we just wanted to provide based upon what we learned when we were on the ship. And the number one that we had is sign up for the shows in advance. So this is a large ship. It does have phenomenal shows. There's an ice show. There's an aqua show, there's like a Broadway style show during our sailing, and these do vary, but there was a tribute band. I think there was maybe a magician, and most of these shows are going to
Yeah.
happen more than once on your sailing. So you can fit them around meals, but you do need to sign up in advance. We saw some pretty significant lines waiting for these in the standby area.
Yeah, and we my second sailing when I went with my grandchildren, we could not believe the number of people in the standby line, and by the time they opened standby up for the aqua show, I didn't know where they were gonna put all the people. There were still so many people drifting in, trying to get seats that were already reserved, like, the people that had reserved time were still drifting in, trying to find the best seating, and then they started letting the standby line in. It was like, "Oh my gosh, this is the theater is gonna fill," and it's a pretty big theater.
Yeah, I think one thing with this is just that it's a new ship, and so everyone on board has not seen these shows yet. So they are going to be more popular in the beginning, but you don't want to spend your 3 to 4 day vacation in a line like that, especially because these shows are free. So just get in the app, check
Yeah,
when the availability opens, book them, and then just walk right in.
yeah. The second tip that I have to put this out there because this was Jody's idea, and it's probably the most the most brilliant cruise tip I have ever had in my life. So normally when you board any cruise ship, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to go look for something to eat. And on a lot of cruise ships, the only option available to you is the buffet. And especially on a ship this size, the buffet can be a little chaotic. Now, especially on embarkation day when everybody is going to the same spot, it's crowded, it's hard to find a table. Jody's idea was to book brunch at the Mason Jar, which is one of the specialty restaurants on board this ship. And let me tell you, this was, I can't even tell you how brilliant it was. We boarded the ship. It was so nice and calm. We went up for our dining reservation and we sat down and had a beautiful, leisurely, non chaotic meal. It was amazing.
And the mason jar in general is definitely a must do on this ship. It's kind of a new concept. It's
Yeah.
it's really delicious. So and then just to be able to sit there while the chaos was happening elsewhere was just great.
Yeah, I absolutely love this idea, and I'm just gonna throw this out there. I've been telling people we're never gonna get a reservation at the Mason Jar again because I've been telling everybody that's the way to do it. And it's not that the buffet is a bad option because obviously, with different tastes and maybe you don't want to spend the extra money for the specialty dining, but it's a huge ship and you have 6,000 people all boarding at the same time, all wanting to grab lunch at the same time. And it is going to be chaotic. And Royal Caribbean does something that I've never seen other cruise lines do, and that is to make that announcement that if you're finished eating, get the heck out. Like, we need the tables, we need the space. And, going to the Mason Jar just, it was nice, it was calm, it was relaxed. We didn't have to rush through the meal. I think that probably one of the most brilliant cruise tips I've ever heard.
The other thing I wanted to talk about was the theme dinners. So I think most people know that there's often a formal night on a cruise, but this is something that you want to be prepared for when you're packing. If you, and in general, just put it out there, you can pretty much wear any sort of cruise casual clothes you want. But if you wanna follow the theme nights, you do wanna check that in advance, and I think we figured out they don't really share them too far in advance, right?
They don't. We were probably 2 weeks out from our sailing before the calendar started populating where you could see what the theme nights were, and I think my best tip for this is, don't go crazy with yourself, especially on a 3 to 4 night cruise where chances are you might wanna pack just a carry-on bag. You don't wanna pack a big full suitcase with a ton of extra stuff. So maybe pack stuff that you can reuse. Like, if there's a white night party and a toga party, maybe just bring a dress that sort of resembles a toga or something that's like Grecian inspired or something that you could use for both nights or, like, I don't know, on 70s night or flower power night, just bring something that maybe you can use at another time so that you're not packing. And, if the theme gets changed and you're there with, like your psychedelic tie-dyed outfit, you where are you gonna wear that again? So maybe use accessories. If you know that there might be a 70s night or a flower power night, just bring accessories. And then if it doesn't happen, or if you decide you don't want to participate, you haven't packed a whole extra suitcase full of stuff.
That's a great tip, especially for a 3 or 4 night cruise where you're really, not going to bring your full wardrobe.
Yeah, and I will 100% admit right now that I did not follow this advice on toga night, and I packed all the toga things. Everybody had a toga, everybody had toga accessories, everybody had shoes that were appropriate for wearing a toga, and on our toga night, there was no one in a toga. We decided at the last minute not to go with a toga because honestly, as a group, we looked ridiculous and nobody was comfortable going to dinner. And I don't know if that experience happened in every other stateroom on board that ship, but we saw not one single person wearing a toga. And Royal Caribbean even did a thing on the calendar where you could come to the promenade and they were giving you an extra white sheet and telling you how to tie it so you could wear a toga. We saw no togas. So I'm sorry that I had packed all of that stuff. And if I had just packed something white and some accessories, I wouldn't have felt so dumb, but I felt a little dumb.
We also wanted to talk a little bit about onboard activities. Now, we have already said a 3 to 4 night cruise, not a crazy amount of time. If your kids are just going to hang out on the pool deck, don't worry about this. But if you are looking for something to do beyond sitting by the pool, hanging out in some of these neighborhoods, these ships, even the shorter journeys, do offer some really fun onboard activities. And for this last sailing, we booked the sushi class. It was held in Azumi, which is the sushi restaurant on board. And this was so fun, right? I mean, we would definitely do this again and definitely recommend it.
Was awesome. Yeah, I would highly recommend it. And, not only, I mean, you paid for the sushi class, but you also sort of got your specialty dining experience by doing it because you got to enjoy all of the food that you prepared.
Right, right. This was definitely one of those things that I would not only recommend booking, but recommend booking early because it wasn't a huge class. So there isn't it's tough with classes like this. If you get on board and decide you want to do them, your availability is going to be limited.
Yeah, it really worked out well that we had booked it in advance because we had, I think, a pretty sold out class. I don't think they had other
Yeah.
available space. And even with the group we had, it started out as one long table, but then there were some people that had come in last minute that they ended up having to put them sort of off to the side. So that I don't think they got the same kind of hands-on experience that we did. Well, definitely, do these onboard activities if you're interested in them. Make sure you book them in advance.
Definitely.
The other thing that I want to bring up while we're talking about dining a little bit is this is a huge cruise ship. And as you could imagine, there are a ton of children on this ship. So the one thing that I was super surprised about is there were no kids friendly cups in the dining rooms. They didn't have lids, they didn't have bendable straws. We ate breakfast at Johnny Rockets one night, and they even gave my youngest granddaughter is 3, and they gave her a full size, like the old fashioned Coca-Cola cups with her juice in it. And it was like, we are all going to be bathing in apple juice in about 3 minutes. And sure enough, I mean, the cups are just big without the bendable straws. If you have little kids, you're gonna have to have a contingency plan. You're gonna have to bring your own from home because we didn't know they didn't have kids cups on this cruise. We ended up running to the promenade where Starbucks is and grabbing lidded cups from Starbucks that we could pour the juice into. But that's definitely something, a tip that we should have had before we went, that there are no kid-friendly cups there.
And I don't think I would have thought about that before hearing that from you.
Yeah, you just kind of automatically expect there to be. I mean, obviously not if it's a predominantly grown-up cruise, but on a cruise that has so many people and so many kids, it was really surprising.
So if someone listening to this podcast wanted to book a cruise and was wondering like the best way to get a good price, when to book, the best deals, why don't you talk a little bit about that since you are our resident travel agent?
So traditionally, the way cruise pricing works is the earlier you book it, the better your pricing is. You'll always have the best price up front. But as the cruise industry has expanded and there are more ships and there are more people wanting to travel that aren't always ready to book 2 years in advance when itineraries come out, We're noticing now that the closer you get to a sailing, if the ship is not filling up, they will offer amazing deals. My best advice is if you cannot book when the itineraries come out right away, keep checking those prices. You'll probably see them go up in the beginning, but then they'll start to go down as the ship gets closer to sailing and all the staterooms aren't full. There are also deals to be had usually around the holidays like Black Friday, 4th of July, Labor Day, anytime that you know that your local retail store is gearing up for a big sale, you can pretty much rely on the cruise lines to be also gearing up for a big sale. And in cruising, there's also something called wave season. Now, wave season generally falls right after the Christmas holidays, January, February, and March. People don't have their vacation time accumulated yet. They may be, just kind of regrouping right after the holidays. The kids are going back to school. They don't really have free time and expendable cash to go right away in January and February on a vacation. And the cruise lines know this. So they drop the prices. Generally, January, February, and March, you can get really good deals on even the newer ships. So you have to keep an eye. If you're working with a travel agent, have them checked. I check weekly for my clients to see if pricing has changed. So it's definitely just like you keep looking, keep trying, keep tracking, and you're gonna find the best price.
That's great advice because I think it's hard to know exactly when to book, and I think people get nervous that they're going to book something and then the prices are gonna change and go down. So, that's definitely very helpful.
Yeah, and most cruise lines will honor if there's a price change and you haven't paid in full yet. Like your final payment is usually due about 120 days before you sail. But if you find a lower price before that final payment date, most cruise lines are willing to work with you and they will reprice the cruise for you. And also check during these like special holiday things like Black Friday and 4th of July and Labor Day. Also check not only the price of the cruise, but the price of some of the onboard packages, like the Wi Fi package, the beverage package. I just happened to notice that Royal Caribbean introduced for their Black Friday sales. So I'm wondering if this will be something that continues for other holidays. They're offering exclusive packages, which I have never seen. So you don't have to buy a full beverage package, but you can now buy a package that gives you Wi-Fi and beverages while you're at their private island. So instead of booking your entire cruise with Wi-Fi and a beverage package, if you just want to sit on the beach and have a few cocktails and reach out to all your friends and neighbors back home, you don't have to book it for the whole cruise. You can just book these packages while you're on the island. And they even have packages for kids under 21 or somebody that doesn't want a beverage package that includes alcohol. You can still get all of the tropical non-alcoholic drinks with these specialty packages. So it definitely helps to look around when there's a holiday or anything like that. Check not only the cruise pricing, but the pricing for packages, beverage packages, excursions, things like that that will also be discounted.
That's really good to know because I didn't realize that about the packages for the island, and I think that's such a great idea.
Yeah, they're billing it right now as a Black Friday exclusive, but it's also sort of a trial thing. So I think if it does well for Black Friday, they're gonna probably roll it out for most of the holiday sales.
Great.
Mail call, question stories, let's hear it all. From you to us, it's wonder and chat. So grab a seat, let's talk just like that.
So there are a couple of questions that I think people wanted to know when we got back from our cruise. And the first one that everybody asked me was about the Thrill Water Park. So Royal Caribbean has their own private island. It's called Perfect Day at Coco Key, and that's one of the stops when you do Utopia. And the question I've gotten asked by a lot of people with children is the water park included?
Yeah, I mean this water park, this is not a little water park. This has a gigantic water slide. It's massive. And if you are traveling with kids and you pull up to this island, that is what you are going to see is this huge complex. The water park is not included in a sailing, but you can purchase, I believe, either admission to the water park when you buy these excursions, or You can also get a cabana in the water park, which includes admission. Is that correct?
Yeah. And, it's so hard to go, and my grandchildren are all little. The oldest one is 6 years old, and it was very easy for us to get off the ship and let him know that he wasn't tall enough to do a lot of the things, but when he gets bigger, we'll be able to go. But it's right in your face, like, you cannot miss it. You've gotta walk past it to go do anything else. I will say one of these new packages that they're rolling out as a quote unquote "holiday exclusive" includes your Thrill Water Park Pass, Wi-Fi package, and beverages. So, that might be something to look into to make it more enticing for the grown-ups that maybe don't necessarily want to spend the entire day at the water park, but that it's I think people are surprised to learn that it's not an included thing, especially because it is front and center when you get off of that ship.
Right. And just to be clear, if you don't want to purchase the water park, there are plenty of things at that island that are free. You can still get off the ship at the island. There are beaches, there are beach chairs, there's a splash pad area. It's a huge island. Two ships typically dock there. There is plenty to do if you don't want to purchase this water park.
Yeah, I think I was on my 2nd or maybe even my 3rd, I'm almost embarrassed to say that, might have been on my 3rd visit to Perfect Day that I realized there was a swimming pool area that was not part of a paid admission thing. I totally missed it on my other 2 visits. I usually just go and, I'm not necessarily a beach person, so I kinda like to pull up to a chair in the shade and maybe put my feet in the water and then go back to the shade, but, yeah, I was probably there by my 3rd time before I realized, "Wait a minute, there's a swimming pool over there. We could all be sitting at the pool." Another question that people have asked is, do you think the ship is too big? Do you think if you have mobility issues or you have toddlers, new walkers, is the ship too big? Should you start when you're looking at cruises, should you start with a smaller ship?
I think that if you're someone who hasn't sailed before or you haven't sailed recently, you haven't sailed with kids, I personally think you focus less on the size of the ship and more on the length of the cruise. I do really like this 3 to 4 day option if you're just not sure. I know a lot of people just they're not sure about cruising. 7 days seems very intimidating. But I will say it is a large
Yeah.
ship, but it doesn't feel overcrowded. Would you agree?
Absolutely agree. And I think, you alluded earlier to the neighborhoods. I think that really helps because if you go to one neighborhood, like you're at the boardwalk or you're at Central Park, like you're there and it's almost like a bite-sized thing. It's very manageable. It's not overly crowded. I don't think we encountered on either of my cruises, but especially on our cruise, which was a 4 night, I don't think we encountered lines anywhere. Like none of the lounges seemed overly crowded. Like there was space for everybody.
Right, definitely. I do think, however, if you are concerned about mobility or the size of the ship, I think this is one case where your stateroom location may matter. And so,
Oh,
thinking about where your location is, if you have a specific area that you plan on spending your time, whether it be the pool deck or the sports deck or Central Park, you can really think about having a stateroom somewhere where you may not have to walk as much.
yeah, I think that's an excellent point. And it also makes me think of the accessibility of the elevators. In theory, I love the way the elevators work, where you walk up and you tell it what floor you want to go to, and it assigns you an elevator. So if you want to go to deck 8, you push 8, and it'll tell you to go to elevator A or elevator C. And I think in theory, that's a really great concept. But if you do have mobility issues, especially if you're bringing a wheelchair or a scooter or something along those lines, you really need to give yourself some extra time because you're sharing the elevators with 6,000 people. So even if you've pushed and they give you the elevator, you may not be able to get on that elevator right away. You might have to wait for a second elevator to come. So I think it's also something to consider where you're located. You want a stateroom that is convenient to the elevators so that you don't have to walk and then wait. And, if you have to wait for a second elevator, it makes it even longer. So,
And I think this is particularly the case when a show gets out around set dinner times. Anytime a big amount of people on the ship are trying to get somewhere at the same time. But yeah, that's really important.
yeah.
Now let's dive into the latest travel news and updates from exciting cruise announcements to must know travel tips. Here's what's making waves this week.
We've come to the part of the show where we just want to give you some information about the latest travel industry news. And I think the big piece of news is the Disney treasure. Now, if you are a Disney Cruise Line fan, you've probably been waiting for this for a couple of years. If you're new to cruising or if you're considering a cruise vacation, this is a brand new ship. Voyage is December 2024. Literally this is the inaugural season for the Disney Treasure, and they did quite a big bang christening in New York Harbor, which is something I don't think they've done with another cruise ship before.
This ship looks fantastic. It's very similar to the Disney Wish in terms of size and, layout, but it has a whole bunch of new spaces.
And I think that's the best thing. I think they took the Disney Wish, which is really a beautiful, beautiful ship, and they've introduced new spaces like the Haunted Mansion themed lounge, the Lion King themed lounge, new dining concepts. I think they've just taken an already beautiful ship and already refreshed it. So if you've sailed on the Wish, you're going to want to go on the Treasure. You're going to want to experience some of these new venues and new entertainment and things like that.
Right, and so while the Disney Wish, similar to what we've been talking about earlier, with the Utopia, it's typically a shorter cruise ship. This is focused on 7-night voyages, and so you'll be duplicating restaurants. So it's really great to have all of these new spaces, and I think a lot of them are based on some really, really popular concepts and themes. It seems like it'll just be really, really popular with families. I think a 7-night cruise ultimately is my favorite length of cruise if I'm going with my family, because it just gives you enough time to not only explore the ship and its spaces, but also just get out there in the world and see things.
Yeah, I love that it's a 7-night itinerary, I like that the Wish is 3 or 4 nights, but again, like with Utopia, I feel like you're not getting to do everything, and with the Treasure, the dining rotation has the same number of restaurants, but one of the brand new concepts is, Plaza de Coco, which is based on the movie Coco, and they're going to have, like, a whole theatrical dining experience, which I I I had never heard of until we started sailing Disney, and even from the beginning, Disney didn't always have these elaborate dinner shows. So it's a relatively new concept even for Disney to have actual entertainment based on movies, and I think that reaches a lot of people. It reaches the Disney adults, the people that are invested in these movies and really enjoy them, and it certainly appeals to the kids. And I also learned that Worlds of Marvel, which is a restaurant on board the Wish, when it transfers to the Treasure, it'll be two different dining experiences. The first one will be based on the Avengers, and Spider-Man will kind of take the lead as your superhero of the evening. But then when you go back for your second night, the entire show and the menu will change, and it'll now be based on a Guardians of the Galaxy theme. So I think that's super cool that they'll be able to do that with this restaurant.
Yeah, that's just gonna be so much fun for kids. I can just only imagine how much they're gonna love that concept.
Yeah, and the other thing, when you go on a Disney cruise ship, the shows are absolute magic. They're Broadway caliber shows. But, even my husband on our last Disney cruise was like, "How many times can you go see the Golden Mickeys?" Like, it's the same show. But one of the things that they're doing as they're rolling out these new ships is they're also rolling out new shows. So one of the featured shows on board the Treasure is going to be Disney: The Tale of Moana, and it's going to be based on the movie Moana, which not only was it a beautiful movie and a super popular movie, but we're about to see Moana 2 come out. So I think it's going to have a whole new audience that will want to come and see this show. So I think this is the news story to watch over the next few months and few weeks as we see some of the feedback and the reviews on the inaugural season. And I think I think we're gonna have to go, Jody. I think we're gonna have to book
Think
it.
so. I think so, definitely. We'll have to research it. That's it for this week's episode of Wander and Chat. Join us next week when we talk about Cabo San Lucas.
Thanks for tuning in to Wander and Chat. If you're enjoying the show, don't forget to hit the subscribe button on Apple Podcasts. Subscribing means that you will never miss an episode, whether it's our weekly chats or some surprise bonus content when the travel bug takes us off schedule. Stay in the loop and be the first to hear all about the travel tips, news, and stories that we have to share. And while you're at it, we'd love it if you left us a quick rating or review. It really helps us find more listeners like you and to fine-tune our content so you like it better. Thanks for your support and happy travels.